Hey guys, it's Nicole and today I'm going to talk about all the books I finished in January. The first book I completed in January was If Cats Disappeared from the World. I adore this. It's a really short book. We are following this young man who's about 30 and he has just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. He comes home from being diagnosed by his doctor and in his living room is the devil. He then makes a deal with the devil that in exchange for one extra day of life makes something disappear from the world. So we follow him throughout one entire week and each day something disappears from the world in exchange for his extra day of life. It's one of those stories that's just about the meaning of life and the meaning of simple things and being grateful. I really love stories that explore and question the meaning of life. If you have any recommendations, please leave them down below. But I really like this and I really like the way it's done because sometimes it can be done in a way that just doesn't work for you. And I just love the concept of the devil. Like it was just such a different and interesting concept to follow. I really loved this. 5 stars. I then finished off a duology and the first book is Dance of Thieves and the second book is Vow of Thieves. This is the sequel series to the Remnant Chronicles. You don't have to have read the Remnant Chronicles to read and enjoy these and you might slightly be spoiled. I love this series. I think I gave book 1 4 stars and I gave book 2 Vow of Thieves 5 stars. We are following 2 characters in this, Jace and Cassie, and Cassie is part of the Queen's Guard and Cassie's on this mission to find a criminal who her people believe is being hidden where Jace lives. And Jace is from this mafia family. Like let that sink in. Like mafia family. Like I loved it. That was my favorite part about these books is there's a mafia family. Family definitely becomes more into the story in book 2, which is why I did prefer the second book, is because I really loved the family dynamics. They were just like ruling this town and they were kind of like outcasted against the other kingdoms. It was really different politics to what I've been reading recently. In this first book, A Dance of Thieves, Cassie and Jace, they meet and they are like immediately kind of hate each other. They end up getting kidnapped by these slave traders and they escape very shortly after they've been taken. When they escape, they're like in the middle of the desert and they're also chained together, so they have to survive side by side, basically stuck to one another. And yeah, the story kind of goes from there. I won't say too much. It's just such a fun YA series. I didn't know that I have a thing for mafia families, but like I do now, and I really want to read more books or discover more books where there are mafia families because I'm obsessed. I then completed Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I adored this. This was actually the first book I completed in 2020 and it was such a good pick because it was a 5-star read for me. I did really struggle with the first 50 to 100 pages because Eleanor was a character that I really didn't warm up to immediately. Like I didn't really understand her. She's very judgmental. As the story goes on, you get to know her and she ends up being a really endearing character that you really feel for. So this story does follow Eleanor. She is someone who's very much alone. She doesn't really have any friends. She's disconnected from her family. At the start of this book, she meets a new work colleague and it's about him and their relationship, which is entirely platonic, and he brings her out of her shell. It's heartbreaking and heartwarming and I really enjoyed it. Trigger warnings though for a lot of mental health. So suicide, depression, anxiety, PTSD. I really highly recommend that you research before you pick this up if you are sensitive to anything mental health related because it is quite heavy in here. It was such an interesting story because I really feel like I didn't get to know any of the other characters apart from like the one male character that was in here that was her friend. Like you did get to know him to a certain extent and you just got to know Eleanor so well. I highly recommend it if you are into these kind of stories. I then reread The Girl, Fire and Thorns and I annotated this like a mad woman. Look at that! Me and a bunch of my friends are doing a read along of this book and The Girl, Fire and Thorns is the first book in the series and it was our January read, but we are following a princess who gets married. She is the chosen one. It's got a lot of politics, there's a lot of romance, there's a lot of unpredictability. Like that's what I love about this book is how unpredictable the story is. You think you know the story, but you don't. Like you really don't. I really also love it because the main character in here, Alyssa, she is really fat and it talks about her binge eating. So she gets quite like overwhelmed and anxious and then she goes down to the kitchens at night and she binge eats. I really liked how that was done and I really like that we got to see that representation, especially in a fantasy book, which is so rare. Yeah, I just love it and with each book this series gets better. If you have read it and you would like to hear more in-depth thoughts, I'll leave the live show linked down below so that you can hear our thoughts. And so I gave this book 4 stars. I then completed the audiobook for Love Boat Taipei, which was a new release. This book we are following this girl who's in her final year of high school and she wants to spend her final summer dancing, but her mom secretly books her into this Taipei trip and it's supposed to be like a schooling trip, but it ends up being like all these kids go sneaking out clubbing every night. And it's kind of like about the people she meets there, coming of age story, her thinking about what she wants to do with her life, parents want her to do with her life, and her meeting these people who they all come from like similar households. They're all dealing with similar expectations. So I gave this book 4 stars because I really did enjoy it, and I really did enjoy like the characters, most of them. There was one thing that happened with one of the other girls that I don't know how to feel about. So obvious it was going to happen, and then it did, and just the way it was resolved, like at first I was like, okay, this is kind of cool because it's mature. So I can't really say too much without spoiling the plot, so I don't know how that made me feel, but other than that, I really did enjoy this book. I then read Steelheart and Firefight, both by Brandon Sanderson. This is his YA series, and I don't love it. I think it's hard for me to love this a lot because I have read a lot of Sanderson and I love a lot of his other books and I just know what he's capable of. This book is set in a world where there are epics, and epics are basically super villains, so they are running the world, and everyone who is not an epic and does not have any special abilities are suppressed. We are following a group of people who are fighting the epics and trying to win back the power. I really can't stand the main character. He is like so ridiculously obsessed with this girl's boobs. It's all he can talk about. Brandon Sanderson's other characters aren't like that, which is why this took me aback, and I just really don't like him. Each epic has a weakness that is particular to them, and the rebels are constantly trying to figure out the epic's weaknesses and trying to defeat them that way, so I really did like that dynamic. But yeah, overall, like the plot and the characters, like especially this main character David, I just really don't love. It feels a little more juvenile to his other books, so it's hard for me to like them. So I gave Steelheart 3.75 stars, and I gave Fireflight 3 stars. And then completed Mistborn, A Secret History, which is a novella, and this is part of the Mistborn world. I literally cannot tell you a single thing about this without spoiling the entire original Mistborn trilogy. I was kind of a bit apprehensive going into this because I feel like with a lot of novellas, they can be fillers. Not much you can gain from it. Like, this is great. It was really, really good. Like, it added extra information, it answered some extra questions that I didn't really know I had, because I still felt like pretty satisfied when I finished the original Mistborn trilogy. Like, I thought I had all my answers, but this really just extended on things. Yeah, I really can't say a thing. You can read this after you read the Mistborn trilogy, but there will be a minor spoiler for the Bands of Mourning. I then read Remember This When You're Sad. I am someone who really struggles with the holiday period. Like, it's not even winter here, it's summer, but it's a period, like, I get so overwhelmed with holidays. And I was definitely feeling down, so I picked this up. My friend Meg from Meg Books highly recommended this, so I was like, let me give it a go. And I've really, really enjoyed this. It's a mental health memoir, and this author talks about her experiences with all these elements of mental health and what she does to help herself, what she has learned, and just her experiences, really. I find it very enlightening to hear how other people deal with mental health and how other people do help themselves when it comes to their mental health. Definitely going to refer this a lot in future as well. I marked a few pages, and yeah, I want to go and mark more, but I really highly recommend this if you are someone who is interested in looking into more mental health, self-help books. But what I liked about this was it wasn't preachy and it wasn't really self-help. It was someone who had been dealing with mental health for a long time and who was still dealing with mental health. It just felt like a diary. I think Meg said that when she read it, it just felt like talking to a friend or like listening to a friend, and that's definitely how I felt when I read this. I then reread Clockwork Angel, which is the first book in the Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. In this book, we're following Tessa Gray, who first comes to London, and then she meets Will Herondale and Jem Casteres, and she gets kind of thrust into the Shadowhunter world. Gave this 5 stars. If we're being realistic, it's a 4, but like nostalgic reasons, it was a 5. And this gorgeous edition I got for Christmas from my lovely friend Donna. Isn't it so pretty? And Jem's my favorite character, if you're wondering. I then also reread The Diviners by Libba Bray. I love The Diviners. It's set in the 1920s, and it's this paranormal fantasy, and it deals with ghosts. It's kind of dark and kind of gothic, I guess you could say. I love the cast of characters. I think that's what really, really makes it. I love Evie. Evie's one of my all-time favorite protagonists. Yeah, it's just a great series. I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobooks are incredible, and I highly recommend them. Also listened to the audiobook of The Hand on the Wall, which is the final book in the Truly Devious trilogy. I gave this book 2.5 stars. From the beginning, it's been really hard for me to love this series. I know a lot of people do, but from the beginning it's been pretty average for me, and I think a huge reason for that is because Maureen Johnson, who is the author of this series, actually wrote a series prior to this one, which is called The Shades of London, and it's so similar. It follows a girl who goes to boarding school in London, and there are murders that start occurring, and she does start trying to solve them, but it's got more of a paranormal element to the story, which I personally prefer because I do prefer stories that have fantasy elements. What's really unfortunate is Maureen Maureen Johnson actually like stopped writing that series. She wrote 3 books. There was supposed to be a 4th book. She hasn't updated on what she's doing about that series in years. It's just an unfinished series at this point. From the beginning, it was just so hard for me to love Truly Devious because I was constantly comparing Truly Devious to this other series. So like it's still fun and it's still enjoyable, but I was underwhelmed and I definitely prefer the other series. Yeah, and this final book I thought was pretty underwhelming. I kind of knew who was the murderer and I really don't like the love interest. Yeah, and there are times where this book's like trying to be overly quirky and it just like rubs me the wrong way. Like a lot of the characters have to have really unique names. Like the main character is called Stephanie and she gets called Stevie, and then there's this character called Elemental but she gets called like Alias, and it's just like, why? A lot of people really enjoy the series and it's got really good anxiety rep and I can see why, but I think for me personally it was really hard for me to love the series having read this other series prior. That's why the same author that I preferred. I then read Red Sister. This was a buddy read with my friend Olivia, so I'll have her channel linked. Please just check her out. I was so hyped for this. I had this on my 5-star prediction list. I thought I was gonna love it. It's about magical assassin nuns. Like, I didn't think I needed to know anything else, but I was actually really disappointed with this. The best way I could describe this book is the entire thing felt like a prologue. The entire book. Like I was just waiting for stuff to happen. I was waiting for information to be given. I was waiting to understand the magic more and the history. We are following this young girl called Nona, and at the start of this book, she's about to be hanged for murder, but she's quickly saved by a nun who takes her away to this nunnery where the magical assassin nuns are. I was expecting also a lot more action, but it's a very slow paced book. When I was looking at reviews, so apparently that's what people really liked. Like they felt like the slow pace of it and how it wasn't all like assassinating and stuff, that it was just that built up the atmosphere, which I can see, but I didn't like. There were also so many characters that were introduced, like particularly at the start, because at the start we're kind of jumping around different timelines. There are just so many characters introduced in each timeline and I was like, couldn't keep up. It was really difficult. One other thing I will say is I did find this to be like mildly fatphobic as well. There's this one character in here called Sister Rose. Every single time she comes on the page there is some description about how she's fat. Sister Rose said something inaudible and hurried over towards Nonna, her fatness jolting and jiggling around her. And then let me get another one. The nun choked on the next word, instead taking them into her arms, pressing them both against her fatness. Like every single page Sister Rose around me just had to be told how fat she was. And it was really unnecessary and it took me out of the story. In the end I gave it 3 stars. At this stage, plan to continue on to book 2. I then read Blood Heir. This really gave me Grishaverse vibes and even Wiccan Saint vibes. It was set in this like kind of dark, snowy setting and Russian inspired. We are following a runaway princess who has blood magic, and in this world those who have magical powers are outcasted. I did a terrible job in this video explaining why Blood Heir didn't work for me, so I'm just going to do a quick voiceover of my thoughts. I thought the start of Blood Heir was so strong. You're immediately drawn into the story because you have this prison outbreak and you have these characters on the run. You have these 2 characters who have to team up but they don't like each other, so you have a lot of banter between them, and you know the stakes are kind of high because they're on the run and they're being chased. It was fantastic and I thought this was going to be a new favorite. However, the action sequences was very unbalanced because there was a lot of action and a lot of things happening in the plot in the first half of the book, and then in the second half of the book it was really lacking. There were a couple instances as well where I think we needed to be given more information to be able to build up a scene. For example, about the antagonist in this book, I wish there'd been more information given about the antagonist prior, because there was no build up and it felt anticlimactic when the antagonist was revealed. I will also say that I had such fun reading about these 2 characters and their banter. Their banter was kind of flirty and I wish the author drew that out more. It wasn't instant lovey or any of that, it was just rushed. I just think she was doing herself a lot of favors and the story a lot of favors by having that banter there, and I think it would have been better if it was drawn out because it really did just play a bit with tension, character tension, which I really liked the dynamic of. So the halfway point was when I started to lose interest in the story. The story is a bit predictable because it did contain a lot of tropes that you commonly see in YA, and I was kind of hoping that it was going to spin those tropes on its head, but it didn't. I still did really enjoy this book and I have every intention of continuing on. It just started off so strong and I had such high expectations from the start, and then it went downhill a bit from there. Still highly recommend this. I'm still really hopeful for the second book because this is a debut book, so I can only predict that this author is going to do amazing things from here. Then I also finished the book American Royals. This was a lot of fun. Like, this isn't my usual book that I would pick up. Enjoyment, it was like a high 4.5, but the actual story, it was like 3. I really needed something that was kind of low-key that I could just like sit back and enjoy because January was stressful with all the fires. To describe this book, It's like a mix of Crazy Rich Asians and Gossip Girl. Fun, it was dramatic. It's set in this like alternate world where I think it was George Bush ended up starting a monarchy, and we are following his descendants who are now like the rulers of America, and we are following the next princess and her siblings. I mean, it's one of those stories that you like don't really take seriously and you just kind of enjoy, and you're there. There's a little bit of girl hate, there's like a little bit of drama, but I enjoyed it for what it was. If you want to like a light like contemporary that's like short and just easy to get through, this is it. The last book I have to talk about is Little Women. This is a wind up Little Women and Little Men, but I only read Little Women. Now look, when I first finished it I gave it 4 stars, but to be completely honest it's probably lower than that because I was bored for a lot of it. We're following 4 sisters. It takes place over many years, and it starts off with the Civil War, their dad's away, and it's just them and their mum and them making do by themselves. I did really like how this talked about like everyday life and how to appreciate the little things. I really liked how all the sisters are really different. I think they all stood for different things. A lot of like nothing that goes on. Maybe 3 stars to this. So those are all the books I managed to complete in January. Please let me know if you've read any of these and if you had similar or different thoughts to me. I would really like to hear what you have to say, and I hope that you're enjoying whatever you are currently reading, and I will see you next time. Bye!